Well, LifeBlood, this is George G, and the time is right. Welcome to today's guest, strong, powerful Jorge Contreras. Jorge, are you ready to do this?
I am ready to do this. Thanks for having me on the show here, George. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Jorge is an Airbnb coach who's developed the R.E.A.L, the R.E.A.L system for helping people generate passive income through Airbnbs without actually owning the properties. Jorge, I'm excited to have you on. Tell us a little about your personal life, some more about your work, and why you
Yeah,
do what you do.
awesome, man. So yeah, 35 years young, based out of Orange County, California, happily married. I have two daughters. I've been investing in real estate since 2011, got into Airbnbs in 2017. Currently have a portfolio of 18 properties. We have 8 that we own, 7 that we sublease, 3 that we manage. And I also have a couple developments, a 4-unit and a 25-unit ground up developments that we're working on as well.
Nice. So this idea of or practice of making money through Airbnb without actually owning the property. Is this a new concept? Like, tell me a little bit about where this came from.
That's a good question. This concept of arbitrage has been around forever. It's exactly how the banks have been operating, how they make their money, right? Let's say John walks into the bank, deposits $10,000. They pay him 0.1% on his money. I walk in to borrow those $10,000 to go launch an Airbnb. They charge me 10% on John's money, and the bank just made 9.9, right? Basically, they're creating money out of thin air. We do a very similar model where we rent properties from an owner. We pay them the fair market rent. We arbitrage it. We maximize the revenue through short-term rentals with high nightly rates. And the difference is our profit. And in real estate, you could either own the real estate or you can control it through a contract. So here we are controlling. And, I always tell people that they should make it their goal to own as much real estate as possible, because that is where you create long-term wealth. That said, most people are not in a position to go buy multiple properties in order to replace their 9 to 5. And that's where this arbitrage model is a great way to get some experience and to get their feet wet.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I love it. So when you started out, you said really 2017, you went down this path. Tell us how you sort of got started and what
Sure.
your thinking was and how it's kind of evolved.
Absolutely. So when I launched my first 4 Airbnbs in March of 2017, I started with units that I already owned. These leases were ending at the beginning of the year. Did a little bit of upgrades, furnished, got some pictures, and then I launched these 4 units again that I already owned. It was a low hanging fruit opportunity. I had a student in 2016 from my previous dance business who told me how she was making 3.5 times more on Airbnb than what she was making with her long-term rentals. And she was doing this with 2 duplexes in Fresno, California. And I was mind blown. I was like, what? This is crazy. I got to try this myself. So once those leases were ending, that's exactly what I did. And so I was able to essentially, my previous business that I had since I was 20 years young, I always referred to that business as my job, because if I wasn't there, it wouldn't make money. And so I was able to replace that business's income. And essentially, I was now like out of the rat race. I no longer needed to do that business. I was covering all my monthly living expenses. Now, the next goal was to replace my wife's 9 to 5. And we calculated that we were going to need about, 3 Airbnbs to replace her 6-figure income. And we didn't have the money to go and buy 3 properties, but we did have the money to go and implement this arbitrage model that I had heard about. And that's exactly what we did. We went, a business partner and I launched 7 subleases in 2019. And then that's how I replaced my wife's 9 to 5, and the rest is history.
Nice. I love it. All right. So I think that I conceptually understand the idea here is that if I do not currently have the cash to buy my own property, but that's something I'm interested in working towards because of what you've been talking about. So I am interested in finding this arbitrage. So how do I identify current owners of Airbnbs who might be amenable to this deal and
Yeah.
what's in it for them?
Yeah, great question. So what's in it for them is, if you look at our population, right, George, 95% of the US population are employees, and only 5% are business owners, self-employed, or entrepreneurs. And about 2 to 3% are self-employed, meaning it's like a 1 or 2, man or woman person team, and they still have an employee mindset because they're wearing all the hats. They don't have any leverage, any scalability. So it's only about like 2%, maybe 3% of the US actually thinks like a real business owner, where they think teams and systems and leverage, and they know how to hire and delegate and automate and SOPs. So when you look at the average landlord, most of them are not part of that 2 to 3%, right? They're part of that 97% that thinks like an employee, and they don't know how to run businesses that require an operation. And this is why, George, when you go to your favorite restaurant or a barbershop, or somebody goes to a nail salon, typically the people that own the business don't own the real estate. The people who own the real estate just want mailbox money. They don't think to themselves, well, wow, there's a lot of money to be made in this restaurant. Why don't I just do the restaurant myself? It's the same thing with Airbnb, right? This is a operation intensive business, and they don't have the experience or the will to actually go out and do it themselves. So what's in it for them is that if their property doesn't get rented, they don't make money. And at the end of the day, they're just looking for a great tenant. So if you have strong financials and great credit, you present yourself in a professional manner, then they'll work with you.
That makes a ton of sense. That's a perfect analogy. I appreciate that. It's a nail salon, but they don't necessarily own the building. They're sending the owner of the building the money, and the owner of the building doesn't need to worry about it. So,
Exactly.
okay, I like it. And then the opportunity is, I say, okay, we'll just use John as the owner of the Airbnb. He's spread super thin. He's got a family, and he's got this. He just wants money coming in consistently. He doesn't have the headspace or whatever to be actually managing the thing. So you say, I will take this over. I will try and
Yeah.
guarantee. How does that work?
Yeah, essentially, what we do is we'll say, hey, and we do clarify, because when we introduce the opportunity that we're going to be doing short-term rentals in their property, they might think that what they're going to receive might fluctuate. So I'll clarify and say, John, just to clarify, here's how it works. I will rent your property on a 12-month lease. I will pay you those $3,000 a month that you're asking for fair market rent. We'll set up an auto pay. You'll get the money not just on time, but days early. With your permission on writing, I will then use the property to run my short-term rental business, where I will work with, working professionals, families coming on vacation. I will handle everything, all the operations. This is going to be a hands-off experience for you. You get your money. Obviously, I'll make my money from running my business. Any types of repairs that are caused by my guests, I will be responsible for. We'll put that in writing. For me, it's just going to be a pass-through cost. I will charge the guests just like a hotel would. And I'll make sure that they care about three things. They want to get paid on time. They want to make sure the property's taken care of. They want to make sure that the neighbors are happy. You do those three things, they will renew the lease year after year, and even start offering you other properties that they may have in their portfolio. There is two other things that are very important as well, and it's in this order. Anytime you're looking to launch a short-term rental, the very first thing you should do is call the local building department and verify if you can get a permit. You should only operate in cities where you can get a permit. Once you know you can get a permit, you need to figure out if the property can actually make money. And in real estate, when you're buying property, they look at something called the comps, right? The comparable sales of similar properties. Well, when it comes to Airbnb, the comp software that we use is AirDNA. They have a section called the rentalizer. You put an address, and it'll give you the projected revenue based on similar properties, based on bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, amenities, and location. So if you see that the property is projected to make, say $60,000 a year, and your rent is going to be $2,000 a month, then that's how you know it's a good deal. So you verify with the permit, make sure you could generate double or more, whatever you're going to be paying in rent. You get permission in writing from the owner, and you're off to the races.
I love it. Cool. So how do I identify would-be partners, the folks that actually own the units?
How do you identify partners? Like, how do you identify the properties? And okay, so we use Zillow. We just go on Zillow, and let's say I want to launch in, Scottsdale, Arizona. Call the city. Yes, I can get a permit. I go on AirDNA. I see that properties are making money. So then I go on Zillow and I find, properties that are available for rent. Typically, the phone number is going to be there of the owner, agent, or property manager, and I just give them a phone call. pitch my short-term rental strategy, and that's how we identify these opportunities.
Got it. That makes a ton of sense. And I'm sure that you get all kinds of different answers. Some people are like,
Oh
sure.
yeah,
Some people tell you to get lost,
exactly.
and everywhere in between.
Yeah, it's everything in between. I've had people say, like, don't call me. This is a waste of my time. I've had people say, hey, this sounds good. Let me talk to my spouse. Or hey, like you're gonna get everything in between, right? Just like when you're buying properties to do flips or wholesale. Typically, these guys, out of 100 properties that they look at, then they submit like 30 crazy offers, and then they end up closing on like one out of those 100, right? For us, we get about a 30% of the time they say yes, 70% of the time they say no.
Got it. That's still pretty good. So, all right. So obviously we want to not get as many as possible because we want to make sure that our financials are in order. So walk me through that process. If I say, "Yeah, Jorge, this sounds great," what do I need to get started from an upfront financial perspective?
Great question. So there's three main things. You need the first month's rent, the deposit, which is typically equal to the first month's rent. So in this case, say it's 2,000 for the first month, 2,000 for the deposit, and then you're going to need to pay for the furniture. And that furniture includes also like small appliances, decor, and then photography. So if you're doing a studio or like a one-bedroom apartment, you're looking at about 10,000. If you're doing like a 3 or 4 bedroom house, now you might be looking at like a 15 to 25K range.
Got it. Well, that certainly does make sense. Okay. So I do all those things. I get the deal, and for the most part, I'm able to pay on a monthly basis, save the first month and the deposit, but then moving forward with the deals that I'm making, I can just pay on a monthly basis to the actual owner of the property.
Exactly. Ideally, you'll take, if you're generating 5,000 in gross revenue and your rent's 2,000, you're paying them from the money that you are generating, right, through the deal. And the good thing is you get paid from Airbnb. Like as soon as somebody checks in, like you receive that money, and within one business day, it's in your bank account. And then every first of the month, you have that auto pay with the landlord, and the money just goes out. So all the money flows into your LLC for your Airbnb business, and then all the expenses flow out.
How does Airbnb feel about this?
I mean, they love it because the more like think about it, right? If you own Airbnb and you're Brian Chesky, if you have more Airbnbs paying you 3% on the host side and 14% on the guest side, you're basically making 17% from all these bookings without actually having the hotels or the units yourself, right? So it's the largest hotel in the world, but they don't own any hotel. So they're just making 17% fees on every, booking, on every transaction. So their Airbnb is perfectly fine with it. Like they honestly don't really care what you launch. You could do a bedroom, you could do a garage conversion. People do tree houses, they do glamping setups. You see RVs on there. You see just all kinds of unique strategies. So anything where people are going to have a great time at a fraction of the cost, Airbnb is perfectly fine. In fact, when you're creating a listing on Airbnb, they don't even ask you if you own it. They really don't care.
Nice. That's awesome. I didn't realize that Airbnb was making 17% on each one of these deals.
Yeah, so they'll charge the guest 14%, and then as a host, they'll take 3%. So we get to keep 97%. I think that's a great deal because they do all the marketing, all the payment processing. They do a lot of customer service. You don't need a website. You don't need to do advertising. Like they bring you all the bookings. You just need to make sure you have a good property in the right location and be able to provide a great experience.
Nice. Well, I appreciate that. I also appreciate you, being super transparent and upfront about that you're going to need the money for the appliances and the furniture and all that. So it's not something to just casually get into. What are some of the other characteristics of people that are successful at this?
Yeah, for sure. A couple other things that are super important is, especially right now in the recession, you want to make sure that you are sticking to primary locations and stay away from secondary and tertiary locations. So out of the 18 properties that I have, 17 of them are, in positive cash flow. And I got one property that is losing $5,000 a month. And this is actually one of the ones that I own. It's in a city. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Joshua Tree, California, but that's a perfect example of a tertiary market. And when we are in a recession, whether it's rents or just the value of homes, primary cities always hold their value, right? Because primary cities is typically where everybody wants to live. It's typically more expensive. You attract people with higher incomes, better credit scores. When you go into the secondary and tertiary, it's more affordable, but again, you also pay for what you get, and cheaper is not better. So in short, all my other properties are in mostly primary and then secondary, so they're doing good, but those tertiary locations are really struggling right now. So you have to make sure that you stick to the solid locations. Like if you want to launch in Florida, stick to the Miamis and Orlando. If you want to launch in Texas, stick to Dallas, stick to Austin, right? If you're in California, stick to San Diego, stick to Los Angeles. Those primary markets are what are going to do well during this time. The other thing that is very important, we are definitely playing a game of who has the most and best amenities wins. So if you have a pool, a jacuzzi, and a game room, you're going to do way better than a property that doesn't have those things.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. What are you going to do with the Joshua Tree property, Jorge?
Excuse me. That's a good question. I'm actually right now we have it on Zillow. We're looking for a tenant that might want to live there for the next 6 or 12 months. So at least the mortgage and the expenses get paid for. Good thing is we did buy the property for like a couple $100,000 under market value. So that's the game plan, is to just break even, just write it out. And the average recession is 18 months. So hopefully in the next 12 months, we're out of this recession. And typically those areas actually do really well. Like if this was like a year and a half ago, that property would easily make 12,000 a month, like 150K in a year, because it is a very popular area for tourism, for travelers, just not during a recession. So that's the game plan, is hold on tight, have it pay for itself, and then we'll see what we do in the near future.
I like it. At the beginning, you mentioned you used to be in the dance business. What is that?
I used to be a professional bachata dance instructor. Bachata is a sensual partner dance from the Dominican Republic. That's the first business I started when I was 20. So I had a choreography company. I used to run a nightclub, and I used to own two of the largest bachata dance festivals on the West Coast.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love it.
Pretty cool.
Beautiful. Well, Jorge, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people learn more about you, and how can they take advantage of your training and your system?
Yeah, I'm hosting a weekly free trainings. You guys can check out the link in my bio on Instagram. Just go to @the Jorge Contreras. That's THE, and then my name, Jorge Contreras. There is a lot of fake accounts out there, so make sure it's the one with like 143,000 followers. Because, yeah, and you could always ask for a video, and I can send you a video or a voice message. Make sure, but yeah, hopefully we can link the account, and that way they get the right Instagram.
Yep, for sure. Awesome. Well, if you enjoyed as much as I did, show Jorge your appreciation and share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Follow Jorge or find him on Instagram at the Jorge Contreras. That was a little better that time. Jorge still wasn't very good, but
That was pretty good.
it's so I will certainly link that in the notes of the show. And I certainly enjoyed your transparency and the way you explained this. It's the first time I had heard about it, and now it makes a ton of sense. So I appreciate that. Thanks again, Jorge.
Thanks for the opportunity. Have a great day.
And until next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.